This tutorial will show you how I make realistic jean pockets. I'll briefly show you how I create the back pocket, which most of you who follow my channel will probably already know how to do. Then I'll walk you through making a front pocket the real way, as well as some tips I have to make it easier in 3D. I'm using the IDE's male jean block, which is available in sizes 28 to 44, and my female jean block is available in US women's sizes 0 to 16. Or you can get them as PDFs with all sizes. I'll put the links to them in the description. So my jean blocks come with all basic details marked out like this, and I'm going to show you how to actually create all the functional pockets. I have a video already on how I do a front fly in 3D, so I'll link that here as well. Let's get started. Okay, we're starting with the easy pocket, a patch pocket, and I'll show you how to create your own markings in case you're not using an IDE's block. In CLO, you need the full pocket marking on the pattern in order to sew the pocket on. When you make a patch pocket, you can clone the marking as a pattern, or you can clone a pattern as a marking. But I always recommend drawing the pocket on the garment first as an internal marking. This way you can make sure you like the size and placement before you create the pocket pattern. So we're going to grab our internal Polygon tool, and I'm going to show you the most accurate way to do this if you're working from measurements. Likely you know the measurements of your pocket because you can probably reference a garment that you have. We're not reinventing the wheel with a denim patch pocket. So we're going to start from the bottom center point, left click down, and if you go straight up, you'll see that it will snap to a straight line, but you can hold shift if you want to be sure. You're going to right click down to enter the height of your pocket. My pocket is kind of an odd height, so I'm just going to do a round number of 6 3/4 inches or 17.2 centimeters. So when you enter that in, you want to make sure you click OK instead of hitting enter on your keyboard. Hitting enter will end your shape, but if you click OK, then you'll be able to keep drawing. Then we're going to draw to the left, and this is going to be half the width of our pocket opening. So I'll tap my right click again, and I'm going to make mine 3 3/8 of an inch or 8.5 centimeters and say OK. Then I'm just going to eyeball this last point because it's kind of hard to measure from this direction. I'll just left click down and then click my center bottom point to close the shape. Now I'll get that bottom point to the right place by using my internal Polygon tool again and marking how far up it is from the bottom and how far out it is from center. Then I'll just use edit pattern and move that point. Then you can select this marking with transform pattern and delete it. And with edit pattern, I'm going to right click on the center line of the pocket and unfold. Just a quick note here, if you've never heard me say this before, your transform pattern tool is like your black arrow in Illustrator and your edit pattern tool is like your white arrow. So it might sound complicated always switching back and forth between them, but once you learn the hotkeys for them, it becomes second nature. You'll use edit pattern to select individual segments and points and transform to select the entire shape or pattern outline. So for the pocket placement, we know we'll likely have to rotate it, but first let's figure out where it should go. The typical way to measure is to measure out from center back to the top and bottom corners, and down from the yoke seam to the top inside corner. It's not going to be a perfect science, but neither is measuring a physical garment. So if you're referencing a garment for a pocket, you may as well reference the placement too. Let's start with the top inside corner of the pocket. I'll mark down from the yoke seam. Mine is 1.2 inches or 3 centimeters. And in from center back, mine is 1.85 inches or 4.7 centimeters. So now I'll move my pocket to place the top corner onto that point. Now we're going to mark the distance to the bottom corner and just kind of estimate where that marking should be. So I'm going to tap my right click and enter in my measurement 3.69 inches or about 9.3 centimeters and hit enter. Now we're going to rotate it, and I'm going to show you a trick. So with transform pattern, you'll select the pocket marking, and if you double click the center point, it will turn orange and you can move it. This moves the point of rotation. So I'm going to move this to the top corner of the pocket, and now when I rotate the shape, it'll pivot from that top corner. So you can just eyeball getting that close to your marking even if the angle of your marking isn't quite right. You guys, I use this pivoting technique all the time. If you really want to be precise here, you can also double check the outside top corner distance below the yoke seam, but I think if you're this close to matching a reference, the rest you can figure out from seeing it on the body and making sure you're happy with it. I'll delete my markings from the edge of the pattern so I can just look at the pocket size and placement in 3D. If you select the pocket marking, it'll highlight and you'll be able to see it better, or else you can change your fabric view in 3D to monochrome. Make sure you have internal lines showing as well. So if you're happy with that, you can select your pocket marking with transform pattern and right click and select clone as pattern. When you clone an internal shape as a pattern, you're going to end up with the grain line of the original pattern. So I like to start by rotating it back to the straight grain. I'm going to right click and select rotate and use the x-axis because my top edge is the only straight axis I have. When you select x-axis, you have to tell it which segment is along the x-axis. And with the edit texture tool, you can then right click and align the grain to the y-axis. Remember, patterns this small should have a low particle distance, so I'm going to set mine to 5. Then with free sewing, I'll sew it onto the internal marking, clicking to start and clicking to end, making sure I go in the same direction on the pattern and the marking. Then I'll select my pocket, and in 3D, I'll right click and choose superimpose over. For realism, I always recommend hemming the top of your pocket properly in 3D. I'm going to do a 1/2 inch or 1.3 centimeter turn back hem by selecting my edit pattern tool and right clicking on the top of my pocket. I'll select offset pattern outline, enter in my hem height, check the box create internal line, and select mirror from the drop down menu. In 3D, you can use your fold arrangement tool to fold the hem down. You can adjust the angle manually if you care what that number is, but it really doesn't matter. With hems, I let it be anywhere between 25 and 0 degrees. But I do recommend checking on fold rendering, which makes that a bit of a crisper line. But that look is up to you and depends on the garment and fabric for what looks most realistic. Now we need a marking to sew our hem down to. So with edit pattern, I'll right click on the top edge and offset as internal line. The distance should be twice the width of your hem, so 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters in my case. Then with segment or free sewing, if you have a point in the middle here, you can sew the top edge to the internal marking and then simulate in 3D. Remember, if your hem looks puffy, it's just because our garment isn't in high res yet. That's due to the collision thickness of the patterns, and if you want to see what it'll look like in high res, you can change that from 2.5 to 1 millimeter. So now that that one is done, I'll right click and clone symmetric pattern with sewing for the other side. If your other one pastes in 3D a bit inside the pant, just pull it out using your blue line of your gizmo. If you're having issues with your turn back hem not staying inside, you probably forgot to put the particle distance down on your pattern to 5. Once you do that, you can grab your select mesh box tool and you can highlight the hem of your pocket in 2D, select it with one click in 3D, and push it inside with the blue line of your gizmo. So that's patch pockets. Now let's move on to more complicated front pockets. The first thing I'm going to do is move my back pant leg away from my front to leave space in 2D for my pocket patterns. Believe me when I say that it makes your life a lot easier to keep your patterns organized in 2D. It helps your brain when it comes to the sewing, and it helps if you need to reset anything in 3D. So again, like the patch pocket, if you're using an IDES block, you'll have markings for the pocket opening and the pocket bag. If you don't have those things, you'll just want to draw them on with internal Polygon. I won't show you that again, but you can go back to part 1 if you didn't watch it and see how I use that tool to create the patch pocket. The main thing to know about these markings is because they aren't closed shapes, you'll want to be sure that they extend all the way to the pattern edge. Don't stress about it when you're marking them out. What you want to do is just after you've drawn your markings, with transform pattern, right click on them and extend them to the pattern outline. And if you do want segment points where they hit the pattern, just select extend and add point to the pattern outline. I recommend doing this if you intend to grade your pattern later. So now that we have pocket markings, let's talk about a real life jean pocket and how it's constructed. In real life, you will typically have a pocket bag that is on fold at this front edge so that it's as low profile as possible. That keeps the wearer from having a bulky seam going down their thigh. So the front side of the pocket bag would sew directly to this pocket opening. and the back side of the pocket bag would be considered the pocket facing, and it would go all the way up to the waistband. Also in real life, you'll have a small facing piece of actual denim that gets topped onto the pocket bag facing side. Because your pocket bag is likely some kind of lightweight cotton, and of course you don't want that to be seen here. That can get a little complicated in 3D, having so many layers and the pocket bag unfold. But we're going to do it properly so that you have all the patterns that you need, and then I can show you in part 3 how to do it in 3D in a way that's less complicated if you aren't worried about the pattern output. So to make this easy, I'm actually going to trace out the two pocket patterns separately and then merge them together, since the two sides aren't identical anyway. With my trace tool, I'll hold Shift and select all the segments that make up my pocket bag facing. Then I'll right-click on one of the segments and select Trace as Pattern. I can delete the internal markings on this that I don't need, particularly the balance lines that run off the edge. You can do the same thing again with your trace tool, holding Shift and selecting all of the segments and right-clicking to trace a pattern. But depending on your segments, it might not realize you want to cut the pattern here at the pocket opening. So the other faster option is to just copy-paste the pocket bag facing you already made, and then with Transform Pattern, right-click on the pocket opening and select Cut. Then just delete this bit. So I'm just going to use my gizmo in 3D to move these into place and layer them how they would go. I'll select my front pant leg and pull it towards me, and I put the pocket bag facing at the back and the pocket bag in the middle. Now we need to create our little denim facing piece, and we also need to cut this portion off of the pant pattern. So what I'm going to do is right-click on this marking and say Cut. That way my facing will already be sewn to the back pant and the waistband. For the sake of realism, we're going to select the two pocket bag patterns and assign them to their own fabric. I'm going to drag and drop Cotton Twill onto that fabric chip in the object browser. I'm in the most updated version of CLO, but I'm using the old library because the old fabric options aren't available in the new library. If you'd like to do the same, you can click the CLO C logo in the new library and select this back arrow to get back to the old library. So our denim facing piece needs to actually overlap the pocket opening a bit, or else the cotton twill pocketing will show in real life. So I'm going to select that line with Edit Pattern and right-click and offset pattern outline 3/8 of an inch. I'll check this box to create internal line just so I can keep my pocket opening marked, and I'll select Extend under the drop-down menu. So now we want to top this onto our pocket bag facing. So I'm going to use free sewing and sew down the side of my denim facing and then sew the pocket bag. You want to make sure to turn this sewing. Do the same for the top edge, and then we need a line to sew this to at the bottom. I guess you could sew along the pocket opening marking, but you might run the risk of the bottom edge kind of sticking out. So I'm going to select the pocket marking on the facing pattern with my Transform Pattern tool, and I'm going to right-click and offset as internal line. I'm going to put in the distance that I offset the denim facing pattern, which was 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimeter. And you'll need to check the box for reverse direction if it's doing what mine is doing. You also want to select the box for extend to make sure the marking extends to the pattern edge. Then you can just free sew the denim facing and the pocket facing, and this line will automatically be turned because it's sewing to an internal line. Now we need to sew our pocket bag to our pocket opening and turn the sewing. You can sew this top edge to the front pant as well and turn it, and the side as well. And then we're going to sew the entire way around here on the pocket facing to our pocket bag and turn that sewing. In CLO, with lots of layers like this, you want to keep the sewing as simple as possible, whereas in real life, all this stuff would be sandwiched together in one seam. But it's best to keep the front and back pant sewing as one thing and then sew the pocket bags to themselves, and only sew one side of the pocket bag to the part of the pant that it touches. So let's simulate and see how we go. But just before we do, let's select all our pocket patterns and set the particle distance down to 5. This will help avoid any collision issues. You don't need to do this, but if I pull everything forward so you can see how it's all layering, and I set my fabric view to textured surface, this will gray out the back side of the fabric. I can also hide my avatar with Shift A, and I can hide any pattern pieces in 3D that I want with Shift Q. So you can see that the back side of my pocket bags are against the body, which is how you ideally always want to work in CLO in order to keep things layered well and avoid collision. However, if we want our patterns to be realistic for production, we need this pocket bag to be on fold at the front edge. but I can't merge these two segments as they are now because that would essentially flip this upside down and make a mess because they're not cut on the same side of the fabric, if that makes sense. So in order to merge them together and make this pocket cut unfold, I need to flip the fabric on the pocket bag. I'm going to keep the pocket bag facing as it is so that the back side of the fabric is against the body. To flip the fabric on a pattern, you just right-click on it in 3D and say Flip Normal. Now my pocket bags will meet and be able to be cut as one pattern piece on the same fabric. So I'm going to select this edge of my pocket bag and hold Shift and select the edge of my pocket facing, right-click on the line and say Merge. You'll have fewer collision issues than me because you won't have pulled your patterns away from the body like this. I can see that merging the patterns lost some of my sewing, so I'm going to re-sew these to each other. Make sure you go in the same direction and basically mirror your sewing, and then also make sure that you turn the sewing. So if you start from the center and go out here, you need to start from the center and go out on this side. Then check Turned. Shift A will bring back your avatar, and Shift C will bring back any hidden patterns in 3D. If I hide my front leg, you'll see my pocket bag is kind of puffy and wanting to roll out of my pocket a bit. Part of that is because I don't have a crisp fold at the front edge of my pocket, which if you imagine in real life, it's like you haven't pressed the front edge flat. When you merge patterns together, it leaves a baseline like this, and I can use my trace tool to select it and hit Enter, and it will become an internal line. Then in the property editor, I'm going to apply a fold angle to it. If you're not familiar with how fold angles work, essentially everything is set to 180 by default, which is just a flat line. And 360 folds completely into the body and 0 folds completely away from the body. So in our case, we want it to be 360, and I'll check the box for fold rendering to make it super crisp. You can also strengthen the pocket bag to help it settle in 3D. And if you hide your front pant leg, you can actually pull on the pocket bag and get it situated without messing up your pant leg pattern. This is what it will look like if you put the wrong fold angle. You can see it's trying to fold the opposite way and it can't really do it. Now we just need to right click on our pocket bag pattern and clone symmetric pattern with sewing to create the other side. CLO will mostly put it in the right place, but you might need to pull your pant leg out a bit. And then of course, remember if it's rolling a little or looking puffy, that has to do with collision thickness of the patterns, and it will go away when it's in high res. The other option you have is to actually sew it to the front leg the way it would be sewn in real life to keep it from rolling out. So I can select my pocket opening on the pant and my pocket pattern, right click and offset an internal line at 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimeter. Uncheck reverse direction, and then with free sewing, I'll sew these two markings together. Make sure you sew them in the same direction, even though they're mirrored in 2D. The sewing is going to look reversed in 2D, but that's just because our pattern is folded. Now we really shouldn't have any issues with the pocket bag coming out of the pocket. And that's it. The only other thing I would do is add top stitching to the pockets and maybe some puckering for a wash effect. So if you're not concerned with the real-world pattern output and you want to make this whole process easier, what I would do differently is I would start by cutting the pocket opening just like I showed you in the last part. This way we maintain the sewing to the back and the waistband. Then I'm going to trace out my pocket bag exactly the same way we did before. This pattern will serve as my pocket bag. Then I'm going to copy and paste it, and I'm going to go ahead and clone these patterns with sewing now because I'm going to merge the pocket bag facing with the denim facing piece. And if I don't have them already cloned, it'll remove the linked editing from this facing bit. Before we merge them, it'll be a lot easier if we get them in the right place in 3D. So I'm actually going to sew the two edges together that I plan to merge, and then select the pocket bag facings, right-click and superimpose side. That'll put them next to the facing patterns. With Edit Pattern, I'll select all of these segments and right-click on one and select Merge. And now I'm going to sew the pocket bag to the pocket opening, turn the sewing, and in 3D, I'll select these two patterns and superimpose under to put them behind the pant leg patterns. If they end up inside your pocket bag facings, just select those and kind of push them into the body. Now we need to sew our pocket bag to the pant at the side seam and turn the sewing. Sew the pocket bag and facing to each other and turn that sewing as well. And then we're going to assign the pocket bags to their own fabric. We're going to keep the pocket bag facing pattern as denim to serve as our denim facing piece, Remember to put all your pocket bags down to a 5 particle distance. So this avoids having to top on the small denim facing piece, and it avoids having the pocket bag unfold at the front. You don't have to worry about flipping normals or fold lines or any potential collision issues with all of that. I just noticed we forgot to sew the top of our pocket bag to the top of our pant. You can also sew these together at 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimeter to keep the pocket bag from peeking out, just like we did in part 2. This 3D method doesn't compromise fit or appearance. The only thing you're not getting is maybe you won't know if your denim facing is peeking out because the whole pocket bag facing is in denim. And also, you won't have the proper pattern output for printing. But if that's not your job anyway, this is a much faster and easier way to do it in 3D.